Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, the bright shining thing that lights your way to the PMP exam. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. In this lesson, we will review the PMP exam content of the first of 5 domains. And by now, you should know that the first domain is initiation. But funny enough, in the PMP exam content outline, they call this domain 1, initiating the project. So they chose a slightly different nomenclature here. Here are our learning goals. First of all, we want to explain the focus of this domain so that you understand generally what will be tested on the exam from this particular domain. Then we'll jump into the details. We will describe the tasks in this domain that the PMP exam will test you on. You will be able to name this domain's specific knowledge and skills, and you will understand how ethics is part of this domain and its tasks. This slide here is intended to serve as a reminder of what we are doing in the video lessons that you're watching right now. It's one of the group of videos in which we review what the PMP exam content is. The goal of the videos in our PMP exam content group is to give you an understanding of what exactly you will be tested on in the PMP exam. The first thing they will test you on are the 42 processes that you have learned in many of the other Prepcast videos. They will be tested on the exam, but we are not reviewing them again here in our exam content segment. We will, however, look at the content tasks, ethics, domain skills, and general skills. And right now in this video here, as you have gathered from the learning goals, we are focusing on initiation. We are going to take a look at the content tasks. We are going to take a look at ethics and the domain skills. But we begin with a domain overview. Let's begin with the numbers of this domain. The domain is responsible for 13% of the questions that you will see on the PMP exam. That means you'll get 26 questions from the initiation domain. In the PMP exam content outline document, PMI has defined 6 tasks that you as a project manager will need to understand and be able to execute. We'll look at these tasks in the following slide in detail. And they also defined 6 domain-specific skills that you and I as project managers have when it comes to initiation of a project. The focus of initiating the project on the exam is going to be this here. We want to assess the feasibility of the project. We want to define the project at a high level. We want to identify the playing field. What exactly is it that we're doing here with this project? And, very important, we want to obtain approval so that we can move from initiating the project to planning the project. Here is the knowledge and skills that PMI lists for this particular domain. First of all, you have to know what a cost-benefit analysis is and how to use it. You have to understand business case development, project selection criteria, stakeholder identification techniques, risk identification techniques, and the elements of a project charter. Those are the domain-specific knowledge and skills that you and I as project managers need to have in initiation of a project. And guess what? All 6 of these we look at in various other episodes of the Project Management Prepcast. So you should already be aware of these, and we don't have to do an in-depth review here. And now we are going to review all the tasks that PMI has identified for this domain. For each task, we are going to first of all read the actual text of the task as it is written in the official PMP exam content outline document. Second, we'll give you our interpretation of this task by pointing out important areas. However, as you will see, the interpretation is usually straightforward. there is nothing really surprising here because the task text is relatively simple. Our interpretation is also quite logical. I mean, it's just project management that we're doing here, but it will serve as a reminder of what is important and needed for you to understand for the exam. Third, we are going to look at how ethics relates to this task. I'll give you examples of how the task at hand should be done in an ethical way, and sometimes, just for fun, I'm going to give you examples of how you could do it unethically. Of course, that is meant as a negative example, and you should always follow the ethical route, but it's often more fun and interesting to think about how you could do something in a completely wrong way. And because this domain here, initiation, has 6 tasks defined, that means we will repeat these 3 items 6 times, once for each task. Here is the first of these 6 tasks. The text is as follows. Perform project assessment based upon available information and meetings with the sponsor, customer and other subject matter experts in order to evaluate the feasibility of new products or services within the given assumptions and/or constraints. So, what does this mean? Well, here is the interpretation. First of all, it means that there is a lot of communication going on in this particular task here. You are going to have to meet with sponsors, customers, other subject matter experts. You are going to figure out what exactly are we trying to do here in this project. And based on all of this information that you are receiving, you are then going to have to assess the project. You're going to have to say whether or not it is feasible to do this project. However, note that the actual project selection, according to this task here, is not your job. This is someone else's job. Maybe a project selection committee, maybe a sponsor, maybe a customer. But whether or not we are going to do this project, or if you have 2 or 3 projects available, which one of those will be done, is not your job. Someone else will have to do that. And now let's take a look at how ethics influences this task. Remember that even though the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct is a separate document from the PMBOK guide, ethics itself cannot be separated from our work. Every action we take, every decision we make, every task we complete should be guided by good moral principles. In the Code of Ethics, we have 4 values: responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. And here in the ethics section, we'll take a look at these 4 values. We won't be reviewing all 4 values on each and every task, but because this is the first one that we'll review, we'll take a look at all 4. So it begins with responsibility. It is our responsibility to fulfill the commitments that we undertake and take ownership of our actions. In the area of project assessment, this means that we cannot simply brush over it. It may be that the project we are supposed to assess is a pet project of some vice president, or it's a project that we would love to be leading. That is no reason for us to do mediocre work. We must give our full attention to the assessment, even if that might mean finding reasons for not doing the project. The next value is respect. Part of our duty in the value of respect is to respect the resources that we have been entrusted with. If we see that a proposed project would strain our company's resources too much, then we should stand up and give a no-go recommendation for the project that we are assessing. Value number 3, fairness. As we are performing the project assessment, we have to ensure that we listen to all the stakeholders that are involved and touched by the project. More than that, we cannot simply pay lip service to them, like I'll just do the interview with that person because I have to, but you have to take their ideas and concerns genuinely into account for your assessment. And last, we have honesty. When you are discussing project feasibility with stakeholders, hear both the good and the bad. Report both the good and the bad. Give your assessment and recommendation based on all the facts, not just those that are biased towards a positive outcome. We will come back to ethics again and again in the various tasks and in the various domains. And as I have said, for this task here, we have gone specifically through each of the 4 core values from the Code of Ethics as a way to start us off on our journey here. In the future, we will not review all 4 on every task, but instead focus on a select number of the values. We're moving on to task 2. Here is the official text. Define the high-level scope of the project based on the business and compliance requirements in order to meet the customer's project expectations. I think the most important words in this task are high level. We are at the onset of our project. We are initiating it, and we want to stay as high level at this point as possible. We want to understand the general direction of where we are going in order to develop the project charter. Also, note that at this point, we want to develop the scope based on the business requirements. The difference is like this. The customer tells you that his requirement is to transport 450 people from New York to Chicago. The scope could be to build an airplane, to build a train, or to rent enough buses to transport them. Each of these solutions would satisfy the high-level requirements that we have. All of this thinking automatically leads to a clear focus on the customer. The customer requirements are important. What we want is secondary. This time we'll look at responsibility and respect here in the ethics section. In regards to responsibility, the Code of Ethics actually calls out our responsibility to uphold policies and legal requirements. And the task itself described that we define the scope based on compliance requirements. So we have a direct link here between the task and ethics. We have to follow regulations and legal aspects. In regards to respect, we do this for our customer. By defining the scope, we respect their opinion and ideas. We can, according to the Code of Ethics, build an environment that engenders trust. And as I've said, fairness and honesty, we skip that. In Tasks 3, the PMP exam content outline wants us to perform key stakeholder analysis using brainstorming, interviewing, and other data gathering techniques in order to ensure expectation alignment and gain support for the project. So, in this task, we are basically trying to identify all individuals and groups who are in one way or another touched by our project or who have some influence on it. So we're looking for all the interested groups here. We are analyzing what their interests are and determine how to manage them throughout the project. We do this by applying many tools and techniques, for instance, the power and interest grid for stakeholders. And in the last sentence, we are supposed to ensure expectation alignment. This is where leadership comes into play. You, as the project manager, now have the task to show everyone what the shared vision of the project is and ensure that everyone is ready to move in the same direction. And when it comes to ethics, I believe that respect is the ethics driver here. So we're going to skip over responsibility, fairness, and honesty, and we'll just look at respect. Because as we begin discussions with our stakeholders, we listen to their concerns about the project, and we treat these concerns accordingly. Their concerns are valid concerns, and even though the task tells us to gain support for the project, we should not use our power, our expertise, to influence stakeholders' decisions or actions unduly. You can bring the vision to them, but you cannot make them buy into it. Here is task 4. Identify and document high-level risks, assumptions, and constraints based on current environment, historical data, and/or expert judgment in order to identify project limitations and propose an implementation approach. Remember, we are still in domain 1, initiating the project. So in essence, we are still preparing our project charter. So we are still at a very high level in everything that we do. We want to define the general environment for our project. We want to identify what will be in scope and what will be out of scope, and also where are the main risks that we will have to deal with. This is very early expectation management with our stakeholders. And of course, we need to be able to give our sponsors some kind of an idea of how we are going to actually perform this project. We need to come up with a general approach. We are now starting to identify initial project risks and constraints. So in regards to ethics, it would be quite easy to ignore a few that we don't like because, well, they might be unfavorable to the continuation of the project, and we could forget them, forget to tell the sponsors about them, so that she doesn't get too jittery about how risky our project really is, wouldn't it? Well, we could do that if we didn't have to be honest. So let's take a look at the need for honesty here in ethics for task 4. As part of our commitment to honesty, we have to ensure that even this early in the project, we try to understand the facts and the truth behind the facts. What do all of these risks really mean? How do the assumptions and constraints influence our project? Are there any uncomfortable consequences? All of this information has to be reported accurately and openly in our project documentation. That is our commitment to honesty. We are moving on to task number 5 in the initiation domain, and here we are developing the project charter by further gathering and analyzing stakeholder requirements in order to document project scope, milestones, and deliverables. Well, I've mentioned it several times already in this lesson. This is where we work on developing and building our project charter. At this point in our project, it is really our main focus. Just open up your PMBOK guide and take a look at what it is that we are doing in initiation. We have 2 processes here: develop project charter and identify stakeholders. The identification and analysis of the stakeholders was spelled out in task 2 a few slides back, and now all of the information that we gathered in task 1, 3 and 4 need to be brought together and documented as our project charter. Note also that in this task here, PMI is once again using the word requirements. It is the requirements that you first and foremost want to document in the charter. The scope can be documented at a high level, but most often it is documented outside of the charter itself. And yes, this means that the project charter is the basis for all future project activities and the direction in which you will go. The charter is pretty much the main focus of the initiating the project domain, and in particular here in this task. So, in regards to ethics and in regards to responsibility, we fulfill the commitment that we said we would undertake. We were assigned to initiate the project, which means we will complete the charter. We complete the charter showing respect to everyone and using input from all the stakeholders involved. We will be fair to the people that we have to deal with as we are doing this, and we will not show particular favoritism to one solution or another, or one person's input over another person's input. And our charter will contain the truth. We will fully disclose the information that we have access to. We are moving on to task 6, which is the last task here in the initiation domain. And, well, since this is the last task, what would you guess we might be doing here? Well, if you said that we're going to get approval, you are right. Obtain approval for the project charter from the sponsor and customer, if required, in order to formalize the authority assigned to the project manager and gain commitment and acceptance for the project. This is the moment that signals the end of the initiation domain of our project. We either receive approval or we don't receive approval. If we get the approval, this means initiation ends and we move on to planning. If we don't get approval, well, initiation ends and we stop, or we redo initiation depending on the decision that's made here. It is also the formalization of the project manager's authority that is an important statement here in the task. PMI is very fond of this one. In the ideal world, you as the project manager have full authority over the management of the project that is signed off in the charter here. Therefore, your name, your formal authority, and the level of authority should be mentioned here. This is then also the moment when you as the project manager take over full responsibility and you start leading the project. You have the authority, the commitment has been granted, and the project is accepted. Now it's up to you to take the next step. Well, and here are some ideas of how ethics could be misused on this task. So don't do these here. In regards to responsibility, we know who is supposed to sign the project charter, but it is easy to leave someone out of the signature block or moving forward with the project, assuming that, well, once it's underway, the fact that Joe didn't sign the signature, they'll overlook that. Respect. The Code of Ethics tells us to negotiate in good faith and not to exercise the power we have at others' expense. How easy would it be to leave the most difficult signatures out until the end? And once that everyone else has signed your charter, you can then stop by this person's office and with the attitude, well, everyone else has signed it, now you have to sign it too. We'll skip fairness and we'll move right on to honesty, because here questions will arise during the approval process of a charter. As a project manager, you could easily drop statements like, well, the expected financial return is really the worst case scenario, we expect it to be much better, or the long list of risks that we have here is because the PMO makes us do it. We don't actually think the risks are valid, but, you know, the PMO is the PMO. So it's not just the written word in your charter that can be ethically wrong, it's also the way that it's presented. And with that, we have come to the end of our review here of these 6 tasks. Here's once again an overview of what they were. We begin with performing a project assessment. Then we define the project's scope. We perform a stakeholder analysis. We identify the risks. We develop, based on all of this, the project charter. And then finally, we get the project charter approved. And those are the 6 tasks that the PMP exam will be testing you on in Domain 1, initiating the project. Until next time.